You might not think much about ancient texts. They often seem like relics of the past with no relevance today. But recently, AI has been able to unlock secrets from a 4,000-year-old manuscript, uncovering knowledge that could change everything we know about life and longevity. So, let's dive into the video and explore how AI cracked the code to what some believe may be the key to immortality. 1. The 4,000-year-old book. Over 4,000 years ago, Gilgamesh was wrestling with life's big headache. How do you enjoy life when you know you're gonna bite the dust someday? So, this dude embarks on an epic quest for the never-ending party, immortality. Now let's talk about the real MVPs, the Babylonian nerds. These guys were writing on clay tablets, not with pens and papers, but with some crazy cuneiform characters. Fast forward to the 19th century, and boom, scholars stumble upon these jigsaw puzzles made of clay. They've been busting their backs decoding these scripts, making sure 2/3 of the text is something we can actually read. Imagine trying to piece together this ancient gossip in languages like Sumerian and Akkadian. Total brain fry. And here's to the tech wizards of the Electronic Babylonian Literature Project, trying to keep up with this Herculean task. Man, the stuff we do to eavesdrop on history. 2. Rare leather text. This ancient leather manuscript, lost for over 70 years in the Cairo Museum, has finally been rediscovered. Unlike most Egyptian texts inscribed on papyrus, this one is made from leather, a material reserved for the most prestigious and important works. Which one is cuter? Like for the dog, comment for the cat. The manuscript stretches over 2.5 meters, 8.2 feet, and is packed with colorful illustrations and religious spells, some of which are meant to guide souls through the afterlife. It even predates the well-known Book of the Dead manuscripts by several centuries, making it a truly rare find. Egyptologist Dr. Wael Shabini painstakingly pieced the fragments together, revealing its purpose to protect and guide the deceased toward immortality. Its detailed iconography and vivid religious texts are believed to have held immense power in aiding one's journey to the afterlife. 3. Creation of afterlife rituals. AI uncovered something wild. A 4,000-year-old manuscript that dives deep into ancient afterlife rituals. This thing gives a front-row seat to how Egyptians saw death and the dangerous journey to the afterlife. It's not just about prayers and sacrifices either. Nope, they had a whole game plan. The Book of Two Ways, found with the manuscript, was basically a map for the soul to dodge demons, lakes of fire, and stone walls, all to make it to Osiris, the god of the dead. The AI even cracked the code on the symbols and hieroglyphs, showing just how detailed these afterlife instructions were. 4. The lost healing techniques. This ancient manuscript, decoded by AI, has revealed some mind-blowing stuff. Lost healing techniques from 4,000 years ago. These bad boys are from the ancient toolbox for health and immortality, long buried under dust until now. We're talking about serious old-school methods from Mesopotamia and Egypt, herbal concoctions, hands-on healing, and some intense spiritual mojo with chants and rituals to get the gods on your side. And the ingredients? Pure gold, myrrh for its top-notch healing vibes, frankincense, and a bunch of other oils that these ancient folks swore could fix you up and maybe even keep you ticking longer. The text is a goldmine, spilling secrets on how to whip up ointments and poultices that could tackle your everyday aches and pains while keeping you spiritually clean. AI has everyone rethinking what ancient wisdom can do for modern life. 5. Astronomical alignments. This ancient manuscript also blew the lid off everything we thought we knew about ancient stargazers. Turns out, these old-school Babylonians and Mesopotamians were onto something big, tracking the moon and stars to call the shots on major earth-shaking events. They had it dialed in, using lunar eclipses to predict whether their big shots were going down or their whole empire was about to shake up. This wasn't just any old guessing game. They had a full-blown system to read the stars and make calls on the mortal world. The sun's yearly dance with the equinoxes and solstices, it was all part of their grand plan to keep the soul's journey lit beyond death. They built structures and rolled out rituals timed perfectly with these cosmic events, all to lock in a spot in eternity by syncing up with the universe's timeless beat. 6. Utnapishtim's Code. The legendary Utnapishtim from the Epic of Gilgamesh was also unveiled in this sacred manuscript. Turns out, he wasn't just surviving some massive wipeout, he was living it up with the gods, scoring immortality for his chill attitude. Here's the kicker. Utnapishtim's got a whole code of conduct dubbed Utnapishtim's Code. It's like an ancient guide to being a top-notch human. Think humility, self-discipline, and big-time respect for the divine. He told Gilgamesh straight up that immortality isn't about how hard you grind. It's a divine bonus for those playing it wise and righteous. The real test? Utnapishtim challenged Gilgamesh to stay awake for nearly a week. Spoiler: Gilgamesh couldn't hack it. It just shows that trying to outlast death on sheer will is a no-go. 7. Sacred geometry. In ancient manuscripts, sacred geometry is said to have played a crucial role in the people's pursuit of immortality. They weren't just throwing shapes around. They believed these precise patterns, like circles and triangles, were the real deal to become tight with the gods. This ancient squad used these holy designs everywhere, from building temples to shaping up their tombs, all to nab that eternal life ticket. And get this, they were obsessed with the golden ratio because they thought it mirrored the universe's perfection. Seriously, every temple and sacred spot was laid out to sync up with cosmic vibes, helping them level up spiritually and maybe, just maybe, keep living it up after death. They were playing 4D chess with the cosmos, all etched into their holy hangouts. 8. Use of metals in rituals. Ancient Mesopotamian folks were all about living forever, and they thought gold and silver were their golden tickets to immortality. They were crazy about these metals, thinking they had some kind of magic powers that could make the gods look their way. Gold was like the sun, never dying, always shining. Silver was all about the moon, getting into the whole vibe of renewing and starting fresh. People made all these fancy ritual objects from gold and silver to cozy up to the gods, hoping to snag some eternal life. Now, thanks to some brainy AI tools like the Fragmentarium, researchers have cracked the code on these ancient texts. They've pieced together all the details about how these big shots and kings were using these shiny metals to make amulets and ceremonial gear, all to keep tight with the divine and keep their life force under divine protection. 9. 15th century manuscript decoded using artificial intelligence. The brain-busting Voynich manuscript, a cryptic collection of scribbles from the 15th century, has been messing with historians and code crackers' heads for ages. Nobody could crack this nut, not even those genius W2 code breakers. Enter the sharp minds over at the University of Alberta, with Professor Greg Kondrak leading the charge. These whizzes whipped out some AI magic, pegging Hebrew as the prime suspect for the manuscript's language. They think the original writer jumbled up the alphabet to keep it spicy. Using some slick algorithms, they pulled out a bunch of words that checked out in Hebrew dictionaries, but putting them together made about as much sense as a fish riding a bicycle. Even with some tweaks and a quick spin through Google Translate, the best they got was a line that said, "She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people." 10. Trade agreements. The Fragmentarium tool is cracking open some ancient secrets, digging deep into those dusty Babylonian texts. It's pulling out all the stops, uncovering the nuts and bolts of how those old-school Babylonians managed their trade deals with the neighbors. By stitching together broken cuneiform tablets, this AI whiz has laid bare the blueprint of Babylonian trade, and boy, were they organized. They had contracts detailing every bit of the deal: grain, textiles, metals, livestock, you name it. These agreements were tight, specifying quantities, delivery schedules, and even fines for screwing up, showcasing a sophisticated legal and economic game. Thanks to the Fragmentarium, we've pieced together bits from hot trade spots like Uruk and Babylon, dating back over 4,000 years. This tool's revelations have blown open the doors on the intricate trade networks stretching from Babylon to far-off lands like Anatolia, Iran, and Egypt. This deep dive into their detailed trade contracts proves just how crucial commerce was to Babylon's powerhouse status across a huge chunk of turf. 11. Unexplored burial sites. Check out this wild find that's flipping the script on everything we thought we knew about kicking it with the gods in the afterlife. Over in Saqqara, Egypt, these archaeology buffs dug up a stash of burial sites, more than 50 of them, some as ancient as the Old Kingdom and early Middle Kingdom periods. Yeah, we're talking way back, around 2020. But inside one of these tricked-out coffins, they found a manuscript that's older than your grandma's grandma's grandma. This thing is not just old, it's the oldest manuscript they've ever laid hands on in these digs. It's packed with all the deets on how the ancient Egyptians planned to navigate the afterlife, sort of like a roadmap to chilling with the gods. These spots haven't seen the light of day for thousands of years, and they're loaded with goodies like the Book of Two Ways, a guidebook to the underworld. 12. Rediscovered papyri fragments provide charming insight into everyday life in ancient Egypt. At the University of British Columbia Library, there was a wild discovery, a bunch of ancient texts just chilling there, including a dinner invite from around 1800 years ago when the Romans ruled Egypt. Imagine getting a fancy invite to kick back on the couch of Lord Serapis. Then there's this letter from some young dude to his mom, throwing out good health wishes like it's nobody's business. Back in the early 1900s, someone jazzed up that letter to make it look cooler for the folks buying old stuff. Professor Toff Marshall from UBC says these scraps really let us peek into everyday life from those times. They got dug up in the 1930s, took a detour through the University of Michigan, and then ended up at UBC, where they've been hiding out since 2014 until PhD student Chelsea Gardner stumbled on them. Now, they're all digital and ready to school us about the past. And get this, papyrus, the stuff they're written on, wasn't just for writing. Egyptians made boats and even grub from it, and it was a big deal from Egypt's first dynasty all the way to the 11th century AD. 13. The most extensive papyrus. This bad boy of a papyrus over at the British Museum is stealing the spotlight with its ancient math hacks. Scooped up by some Scottish lawyer in the 1850s, the Rin mathematical papyrus is packed with 84 brain teasers, from number crunching to geometry, and even some street-smart problem-solving. The guy who penned this was riding the high of Apophis's reign. Yeah, that big shot from the Hyksos 15th dynasty around 1550 BC. He wasn't just doodling, he was copying some old-school tricks from way back in the 12th dynasty. Think 1985, 1795 BC. Flip to the back and it's like a historic throwdown, detailing some Egyptian towns getting snagged during the pre-game of the New Kingdom's rise against those Hyksos invaders around 1550-1070 BC. This sheet's not just old, it's a lesson in survival. 14. Ancient Egyptian soldiers' 1-800-year-old letter unveils his hopes and fears. From 1 to 800 years ago, a man named Aurelius Polion was stationed in what is now Hungary, serving with the Roman army's Legio II Adiutrix. He was likely a volunteer, but far from home and feeling increasingly desperate. So this guy had been sending letters, 6 of them no less, to his mom, sister, and brother back in Egypt. And guess what? Radio silence. No replies, nothing. He wrote in Greek on papyrus, and his words were just left hanging there. This letter was unearthed a century ago, near a temple in Tebtunis, Egypt, by the sharp-eyed explorers Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt. Thanks to some advanced infrared imaging and the brilliant efforts of Grant Adamson, a doctoral student from Rice University, we finally got the full story from Polion's letter, which was published in the Bulletin of the American Society of Papyrologists. As for Polion, he was just trying to secure leave to head home. Whether his family ever received his messages or what they thought of them remains unknown. 15. Ancient Egyptian remedies. These ancient scrolls are spilling the beans on some hardcore medical moves from 1900 years back, tucked away since they were unearthed in Oxyrhynchus in 1915. These bad boys are packed with everything from radical eye surgeries to headache cures, like rocking a garland of Shamadafni leaves to shake off a nasty hangover, courtesy of old Greek know-how, possibly linked to Dioscorides herbals. The doctors at Oxford's Sackler Library Library, part of the Egypt Exploration Society, are diving into Volume 80, which dishes on how to deal with hemorrhoids, ulcers, toothaches, and even some intense eye surgeries. They weren't playing around. Some remedies included a wild mix of copper flakes, lead, antimony oxide, and poppy juice. One nasty procedure described is flipping an eyelid back in place. Yikes. Plus, there's a shout-out to ancient hangover cures with a stew recipe from the 1,000-year-old Kitab al-Tabi, featuring meat, chickpeas, and fermented yogurt to ease those rough mornings. These papyri are a goldmine, even pinpointing human kidneys in a way no one before them did, setting the record for the oldest known mention of these organs.
As the sunlight brightens the Nile, Pesachet checks her supplies: honey, garlic, cumin, acacia leaves, cedar oil. She's well stocked with the essentials she needs to treat her patients. Pesachet is a sunu, or a doctor. In order to become one, she had to train as a scribe and study the medical papyri stored at the Per Ankh, the House of Life. Now she teaches her own students there. Before teaching, Pesachet has a patient to see. One of the workers at the temple construction site has injured his arm. When Pesachet arrives, the laborer's arm is clearly broken. And worse, the fracture is a sed with multiple bone fragments. Pesachet binds and immobilizes the injury.
16. The Dunhuang Manuscripts. Dunhuang manuscripts are a stash of about 20,000 epic scrolls hidden in China's Mogao caves. They've been chilling there since way back between the 5th and 11th centuries. A Taoist monk stumbled on them in 1900, and boy, had they been sitting in a sealed-up cave chamber for nearly 900 years. A bunch of these ancient texts got snatched up by European adventurers, while the leftovers were shipped off to Beijing. You can peep them today at the National Library of China. These manuscripts aren't just your average dusty old scrolls. They pack a punch with Buddhist vibes, plus a sprinkle of Taoist, Nestorian Christian, and Manichaean magic. And it doesn't stop there. They've got secular scripts covering everything from math to history, astronomy, and the art of words. Topping it off, there's a superb collection of folk literature in there, giving us the real deal scoop on everyday ancient life, showing off how the regular Joe mixed it up with society, power, and family. These texts light up the dark corners of history, showing us the real heart and soul of those times. 17. The Kangyor, written with 9 precious stones. Back in the day, the Tibetans were all about this shamanistic vibe called Bon. But then, between the 6th and 8th centuries, Buddhism started creeping into those towering peaks. Fast forward to the 14th century, and bam! They finally nailed down the Tibetan Buddhist canon, including the Kangyor, which is basically the Buddha's greatest hits, translated. Now, the Kangyor wasn't just any book. They made copies, right? But one of these bad boys is out of this world. It's inked with 9 precious stones. We're talking gold, silver, coral, pearl, mother of pearl, turquoise, lapis lazuli, copper, and steel. Literally the fanciest ancient text you can find. They ground these gems into powder, mixed them with some high-altitude water and goat's milk for that luxe adhesive, and used a fancy sable brush to get it all down on sleek black paper. Plus, they threw in some superb paintings following Zanabazar's style, which apparently can chill you out and blow your mind just by looking at them. 18. The legendary Emerald Tablet. This Emerald Tablet is one heck of a mysterious chunk of stone, etched with the universe's top secrets. No one knows exactly where it first popped up, buried deep in layers of wild myths and tall tales. The hottest story around is that this tablet was snagged from under a Hermes statue in Tiana, literally in the dead hands of Hermes Trismegistus himself. Another wild claim, it was Seth, Adam, and Eve's third kid who scribbled down the original. Some even whispered it hung out in the Ark of the Covenant, and a few die-hard fans are convinced it's from the lost city of Atlantis. This tablet wasn't just a showpiece, it was a game-changer in the alchemy world. Medieval and Renaissance brainiacs couldn't get enough of it, and it's still stirring up the scene. Despite heaps of translations and commentaries breaking down its message, nobody's really got the full scoop on it. 19. The Egyptian Dream Book. The Egyptian Dream Book, scribbled in hieratic script on papyrus, was yanked out of Deir el-Medina. That's right, the workers' pit stop near the Valley of the Kings. We're throwing it way back to the time of Ramesses II, around 1279-1213 BC, where every entry kicks off with, "If a man sees himself in a dream." Line after line, you've got dreams spelled out, tagged as good or bad, with what they mean slapped right beside them, like, "See yourself peeking out a window in your snooze." Good news, it means they hear you loud and clear. The good vibes are all up front, with the bad omens in red ink screaming trouble.
Dreams. I'm just going to read. It says, "Do you believe that dreams can foretell the future? If you do, then you are not alone. The divination of dreams, or oniromancy as it is called, has its roots in the ancient world. For instance, in the book of Genesis, Joseph, the son of the Jewish patriarch Jacob, had the ability to divine the future based on dreams. According to the Bible, this ability allowed Joseph to interpret Pharaoh's dream, which foretold of a 7-year famine. This enabled Egypt to avoid this disaster and contributed to Joseph's meteoric rise in the Egyptian hierarchy.
20. Hammurabi's Code of Laws. This tough guy Hammurabi really knew how to run the show back in his day. Ruling from 1792 to 1750 BC, he was the big boss of the first dynasty of Babylon. Under his watch, Babylon turned into a heavy hitter in Mesopotamia, gobbling up territory left and right. By the end of his reign, Hammurabi had the whole of Mesopotamia eating out of his hand, though his successors kind of dropped the ball and couldn't keep it together. But his Code of Laws, this no-nonsense eye for an eye playbook, has stuck around even after all these centuries, only dug up in the 20th century. These rules lay down the law on crimes and their paybacks, making sure everyone knew the score. Trust me, you didn't want to mess up in Hammurabi's hood. 21. The Timbuktu Manuscripts. Timbuktu, sitting at the Sahara's doorstep in what's now Mali, packs a hefty historical punch. Founded way back in the 5th century, it hit its stride in the 15th and 16th centuries as both a spiritual and intellectual hotspot. This place wasn't just any old city, it was a bustling crossroads for Europeans, Africans, Egyptians, and Moroccans, all swapping salt, gold, ivory, and even slaves. But Timbuktu was more than a marketplace. It was a melting pot of ideas and beliefs, with intellectuals and thinkers trading thoughts as eagerly as merchants traded goods. Central to this exchange were the Timbuktu manuscripts, real showstoppers with their gold, red, and black calligraphy on leather-bound pages. And not just pretty to look at either. These texts were jam-packed with high-octane brain fuel, covering everything from the Quran to poetry, Sufism to science, all penned between the 13th and 17th centuries.
We smuggled the manuscripts out very slowly, little by little, over a period of 6 months. We took them out of Timbuktu in 4x4 SUVs. We brought them to Bamako. We also stockpiled them in small boats about 5 miles outside of Timbuktu and took them 375 miles away.
22. Bamboo Medical Books of Bianqui. Back in 2013, these hotshot archaeologists struck gold in the town of Tianhui, Chengdu, unearthing 920 ancient bamboo strips stashed away in 4 tombs from the Western Han Dynasty era, which lasted from 206 BC to 24 AD. These weren't just any old strips. They were packed with 2,000-year-old secrets for kicking illnesses to the curb, scribbled down by none other than Bianqui, the legend himself, who's tagged as China's first doctor. The brainiacs got down to translating these bad boys, and boy, did they spill the tea. Turns out, Bianqui was all about checking your pulse to figure out what's messing with your health. The texts didn't just stop at one trick. They covered the whole health spectrum, from internal medicine and surgery to tackling issues in gynecology, dermatology, and even eye problems. Oh, and let's not forget about the horses. 184 pieces of these strips were all about keeping those ancient stallions in top shape, marking some of the sickest veterinary insights of ancient China. 23. The Copper Scroll. The Copper Scroll is not just another piece of old parchment from the Dead Sea Scrolls stash found in the Qumran caves. Nope, this one's a total oddball. Unlike its bookish buddies, this scroll is all metal and mystery, scribbled with a treasure map vibe listing 64 spots to hit up for some insane loot, tons of gold and silver, plus some ancient bling and scrolls. It's got everyone scratching their heads because it doesn't match anything else from that time. It's so out there that experts like Professor Richard Freund think it was dropped off in the cave way later than the rest. It lists over 4,600 talents of precious metals. We're talking about a treasure trove worth over $1 billion. Yeah, billion with a B. This is the kind of stuff that changes the game. This ain't just history, it's the jackpot history. 24. The Takenouchi Manuscripts. Takenouchi manuscripts are some wild texts scribbled in a mashup of Japanese and Chinese characters. They say these papers were penned 1,500 years back by some dude named Takenouchi no Matori. Still, the legends claim they were originally written by the gods themselves ages ago in heavenly script. So these freaky documents spin a yarn about humanity like no other, kicking off from creation itself right up to when Christianity started making waves. They paint a picture of a world where everyone chilled in perfect harmony under some supreme god's kid. Now, trying to dig up the real deal about where these manuscripts came from, or if they're the real McCoy, is a total dead end. Word is, the government nabbed the original copies, and oops, they somehow lost them. So now, everyone's left guessing whether there's any truth to these tales, or it's all just ancient gossip. 25. The Sumerian King List. The Sumerian King List is basically a who's who of ancient rulers, stretching back to the times when gods supposedly ran the show right up until the regular human kings took over. Found in the dust of old Iraqi digs, this artifact is a blockbuster, mixing up legendary and real-life monarchs. The real treasure, the well-blundled prism housed in Oxford's Ashmolean Museum. This 8-inch prism is the most complete and beefiest version of the king list we've got. You can spin it around thanks to what used to be a wooden spindle smack in the middle, flipping through the ages from rulers before the big rains to the hotshots around 1763-1753 BC. This piece isn't just ancient bling, it charts out serious historical timelines and even echoes some of the tales from Genesis. This is one epic slice of history caught on cuneiform, and you bet it schooled a ton of folks on how the ancient Game of Thrones was played out. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this fascinating dive into ancient mysteries and cutting-edge technology, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible discoveries.